Keanu Reeves stood at the bus stop in downtown Los Angeles dressed simply in a worn leather jacket and faded jeans, a stark contrast to the businessmen beside him who couldn't hide his contempt. What happened next would change one man's perception forever and remind everyone of the true meaning of kindness. Before we continue with this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to our channel because tomorrow we have another heartwarming story for you. The evening rush hour in Los Angeles was in full swing, people hurrying home, conversations overlapping, and car horns blaring in the distance. In the middle of all this chaos, a man waited quietly at the bus stop. That man was Keanu Reeves. He was dressed casually in a leather jacket that had seen better days, faded jeans, and scuffed boots. His dark hair was slightly tousled by the gentle breeze. There was nothing flashy about him, not a hint of the Hollywood star that he was. He carried a small paper bag and stood patiently, watching the world go by. While everyone else rushed around him, Keanu remained calm, observing the city life with quiet interest. He didn't mind being unrecognized. In fact, he seemed to prefer it that way. Standing next to him at the bus stop was Michael Bennett, a successful investment banker dressed in an immaculate tailored suit, Italian leather shoes, and a watch that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Michael glanced at Keanu with an air of superiority, noticing the simple clothes and casual demeanor. He made a quick judgment without knowing who he was standing beside. After a few minutes of silence, Michael checked his expensive watch and sighed loudly. "Buses, always late," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else, but loud enough for Keanu to hear. Keanu turned slightly and offered a gentle smile. "Yeah, but they get us where we need to go eventually." Michael raised an eyebrow, surprised that the casually dressed stranger had responded. He took another look at Keanu and scoffed slightly. "I usually take Uber, but my phone died. Otherwise, I wouldn't be standing here." Keanu nodded understandingly. "I like buses," he replied. "The conversations you overhear, the people you meet. It's like a small slice of humanity." Michael laughed dismissively, as if the idea was ridiculous. "I prefer my privacy," he said sharply. "Some of us work hard to avoid certain situations." Keanu didn't seem offended by the comment. He simply shrugged and continued watching the street ahead. The silence between them grew uncomfortable until it was broken by the arrival of a disheveled man, clearly homeless, who approached the bus stop. His clothes were dirty and worn, his face weathered by years of hardship, and his walk slightly unsteady. The homeless man, James, was a veteran who had fallen on hard times after returning from overseas. He stood at the edge of the bus shelter, trying to escape the chill of the evening air. Michael immediately tensed up and moved away, clutching his briefcase tighter to his chest, his disgust evident in his expression. Keanu, however, remained exactly where he was, not moving an inch away from the newcomer. James noticed the reaction from both men, the banker's revulsion and Keanu's calm acceptance, and he nodded slightly in Keanu's direction, as if thanking him for not moving away. The small interaction didn't go unnoticed by Michael, who watched with growing disdain. "You shouldn't encourage them," Michael whispered to Keanu, once again assuming a familiarity that wasn't there. "They'll just ask for money every time." Keanu turned to face Michael, his expression calm, but serious. "Encourage who?" he asked simply. Michael gestured subtly toward James. "People like that," he said, lowering his voice. "They're just looking for handouts." Keanu's face remained impassive, but there was a hint of disappointment in his eyes. "People like that," he repeated softly. "They have names, stories, lives, just like you and me." Michael scoffed again, his arrogance showing through. "They made their choices," he replied dismissively. "I worked hard for what I have. Nobody handed me anything." Keanu looked at Michael for a moment, taking in the expensive suit, the shiny shoes, and the air of superiority. "I think you'd be surprised," he said quietly, "how thin the line is between any of us and unexpected hardship." Michael laughed out loud this time, drawing attention from others at the bus stop. "You can't be serious," he said, gesturing to himself and then to James. "There's a world of difference between him and me." At this point, James, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat. "I can hear you, you know," he said, his voice surprisingly articulate and steady. "I'm homeless, not invisible." Michael had the decency to look embarrassed for a moment, but quickly recovered his composure. "Sorry," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "But facts are facts. Some of us make better choices." James straightened up slightly, revealing better posture than his appearance would suggest. "I served 3 tours in Afghanistan," he said calmly. "Came home with PTSD, lost my wife, my job, and eventually my home. But please tell me more about choices." Michael was visibly uncomfortable now, caught in his own prejudice. His face flushed with embarrassment, and he fumbled for a response. Well, that's not what I meant exactly," he stammered. Keanu, who had been watching the exchange quietly, stepped forward and extended his hand to James. "Thank you for your service," he said sincerely. James took his hand, shaking it firmly, looking Keanu in the eyes with gratitude. "Not many people say that anymore," he replied with dignity. The bus finally arrived, breaking the tension of the moment. As the doors opened, Michael rushed aboard quickly, taking a seat at the front, desperate to escape the uncomfortable situation. Keanu, however, gestured for James to go ahead of him. The veteran nodded gratefully and climbed on board, but when he reached for his pocket, his face fell. "I can't find my bus pass," he said quietly, embarrassment crossing his features. Before he could step back down, Keanu reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and paid for both their fares. "It's no problem," he said with a smile that could light up the darkest room. James thanked him and moved toward the back of the bus. Keanu followed, but instead of taking any of the empty seats, he sat down next to James, continuing a conversation that had begun at the bus stop. Michael watched from his seat at the front, his disgust now mixed with confusion at why someone would choose to sit with a homeless person. Gradually, the people on the bus began to recognize who was sitting among them. Whispers started to spread as passengers realized that Keanu Reeves was in their midst. Michael overheard the conversations, his eyes widening in disbelief. He kept looking back at Keanu and James, deep in conversation like old friends, the Hollywood star giving his full attention to the homeless veteran. The bus journey continued with Michael becoming increasingly uncomfortable, not just because he had been rude to Keanu Reeves without recognizing him, but because he was being forced to confront his own prejudices. As he watched Keanu and James talk, laugh, and share stories, he couldn't ignore the humanity in the interaction. When the bus reached downtown, Keanu and James stood up to exit, and Michael impulsively followed them. He felt a need to apologize, not just for his rudeness, but for his judgment. Once they were on the sidewalk, Michael approached them nervously. "Excuse me," he began. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how I behaved back there." Keanu looked at him with a gentle expression. "It's not me you should apologize to," he said simply. Michael turned to James, his embarrassment evident. "I'm sorry for what I said. That was unfair of me." James nodded, accepting the apology with grace. "We all make judgments," he said. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong." Michael stood there awkwardly, not sure what to say next. Keanu reached into his paper bag and pulled out a sandwich, offering half to James, who accepted it gratefully. Then, to Michael's surprise, Keanu offered the other half to him. "Would you like to join us?" he asked. "There's a park across the street." Michael hesitated for a moment, looking at his expensive suit and then at the two men before him. Something shifted in Michael's perspective in that moment. He looked at James and saw not a homeless man, but a veteran who had sacrificed for his country. He looked at Keanu and saw not a celebrity, but a human being who treated everyone with dignity. "I'd like that," he said finally, taking the offered sandwich. The three men walked toward the park, an unlikely trio connected by a chance encounter and a simple act of kindness. As they sat on the park bench, James began to share his story. Since returning from Afghanistan, he had struggled with nightmares, flashbacks, and the inability to hold down a job. The VA had helped some, but the system was overwhelmed, and he had fallen through the cracks. "I keep trying, though," he said. "Every day is a new chance." Michael listened with newfound respect, realizing how he had misjudged someone based solely on appearance. "I might be able to help," he said after a while. "My firm has a veteran hiring program. I could put in a word, get you an interview." James looked at him, skepticism in his eyes. "Why would you do that?" he asked. "You don't even know me." Michael glanced at Keanu, who was quietly listening to the exchange. "Let's just say I'm learning to see people differently," he replied. Keanu smiled, but remained silent, allowing the moment to unfold naturally. The conversation continued as the evening darkened around them. Three men from vastly different worlds finding common ground in simple, human connection. As they prepared to go their separate ways, Michael handed James his business card. "Call this number tomorrow," he said. "I'll make sure they're expecting you." James took the card carefully, as if it were made of gold. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Keanu, who had been mostly listening throughout their conversation, finally spoke. "Your actions can change someone's world," he said, looking at Michael. "Remember that the next time you meet someone who seems different from you." Michael nodded, taking the words to heart. As they parted ways, Keanu disappeared into the night, as unassumingly as he had appeared, leaving behind a changed perspective and a potential new beginning. 2 weeks later, Michael was walking through his office when he spotted a new employee in the mailroom. It was James, clean-shaven, wearing a company uniform, and looking healthier than before. They locked eyes across the room, and James gave him a nod of gratitude. Michael returned the gesture, realizing that one moment of kindness could indeed change someone's world. What he had learned from Keanu Reeves that evening wasn't just about treating celebrities with respect, but about seeing the humanity in everyone, regardless of their circumstances. Sometimes the most important lessons come from unexpected teachers, and the true measure of a person isn't in their wealth or status, but in how they treat others, especially those who can offer nothing in return. If you enjoyed this story, remember that kindness costs nothing, but means everything to those who receive it. In a world where you can be anything, be kind. Like our page and subscribe for more heartwarming stories of human connection and compassion. Remember, sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is to simply see one another as human beings worthy of dignity and respect. Be the change you wish to see in the world, and your actions just might inspire others to do the same. See you in our next story.